Welcome, welcome, welcome. I wanted to bring something forward this evening. Everybody can hear me? Thumbs up? Thumbs? Okay. We have been exploring as a group for actually probably the whole time we've been a group, but definitely within the last couple of years and the retreats and the evening gatherings with the giving of the mind to the heart. And what that all means, I mean, it's complex. It has lots of facets. In some ways, it's very simple. When we internalize it, the way I always do is like, what would my kid self do without all the intellectualization, and so in some ways it can be kind of like that book. I can't remember. It was like everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten or something. Getting out of the whys of I can't possibly, show up here like this because of this. So, in some ways, it's kind of a simple thing. Dropping out of the intellectualizations around how and why and should and shouldn't and defense and, all of our stuff, our conditioning around protection, essentially. Protection of what we perceive to be ourselves. But it has a lot of facets as well. And we've been talking a lot over the course of our being a group about, just what exactly is the ego, is at least in my teaching and the way that I see it, with the something comes into consciousness, there's a reaction to that something that's generally in the form of a thought. And then the thought is believed, and then the belief creates an emotion and a visceral reaction, and then that creates another thought and yet another belief and another, and it goes like this, and it perpetuates and generates itself, they did that, and the reason they did that is da 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 da. I believe that. That makes me feel like this. That makes me think that. I believe that. That makes me, our process. And we practice a lot in meditation, whether that be formal meditation, or the meditation of life's events, or the meditation of relationship or whatever. In surrendering, letting go, giving way, these beliefs that generate identity, seeing through them. But that happens here as well. There is emotional identity to the me. And when we continue to drop down from the intellectual process and from the head and the ideas and all of that, and I'm, always pointing to the heart of the heart. It's good and useful to remember that the veil of identity exists here as well. we have a feeling of how it feels to be me. And Eckhart Tolle just did a brilliant job with deconstructing that, in my opinion, with his it's not his painting of the pain body, which is generated, like Byron Katie always tries to break down, through belief. We believe certain thoughts and it makes us feel a certain way, but then after a certain point, you know, we have lived some longer lives, and so after a certain point, you kind of just carry this emotional body, kind of like the conditioned thoughts, without any conscious awareness that, oh, because it just starts to feel like that's how I feel. So it's another level of identification that starts will start coming forward to be seen and to be seen through, to be compassionately recognized in gentleness and forgiveness and all of that. But it can be pretty stormy. It can be pretty stormy. And in a time like we're living in, the collective emotional identity, the collective pain body, the collective the way we feel collectively is really strong. And if there's a place of resonance and landing, it's below the level of consciousness, you know, like so much of this is. I mean, we've all discovered that. We've sat on our cushions facing ourselves in silence enough times that we recognize there's a lot of stuff in there, right? That is not recognizable until we're quiet. And I think a lot of people are being very faced with this right now because their lives are very diminished, and I don't mean in a diminished capacity or something like that, but like the distractions and the activities and the I'll go do that, I'll go do this, I'll go see so and so. All of that's fabulous part of our lives. I hope we all come back around to that soon. But the collective quiet is really stirring the pot. It's really stirring the pot. The emotional body, the emotional identities. So taking a dive into our hearts, which you all know I'm always sort of pushing towards that, can feel even more intense, you might say. And I get it. And what a rich, rich, rich time. What an opportunity. Because the emotional identities that perpetuate the idea of separateness, maybe not for you, but for me, can be more subtle. Can be more subtle. Thoughts are like up here, kind of loud in the sensory area of our being. And attention can often be up here. When it starts dropping down, a lot of these emotional identities, I guess I'm going to keep saying, the layers on top of the heart that perpetuate a separate me are often, pre-verbal. Very deep. And these layers tend to bump up against the really deep layer, the kind of foundation of me, which is that no to death. The existential kind of gripping way down in the gut and around the tailbone, way down and deep in consciousness. This layer here is, you might say, closer. And in this time, my daughter sent me a funny meme today where some guy is giving a presentation and it says, April, it can't get much worse. And then it says, May, murder hornets. You know what I'm saying? The sky is falling is in the collective consciousness. The fear of death. As the opposite of life, see? When there's still a me, there's still separation and division. That thought of non-existence, death as non-existence. Death as the opposite of life is really frightening. It's frightening. A lot of emotion, which can feel, depending on how you're wired. A lot of us are fight or flight, from whatever, for whatever reason, is very jacked up. I certainly had one of those nervous systems, and the whole rewiring of that and delving into the reality of it and what was wanting to come forward to be released so it can be like everything else and head on down the stream rather than being held right here, was very tumultuous. It was a tumultuous process and often felt like danger to this nervous system in this case. And I'm not saying that needs to be you, but I know a few of you have talked to me about this. That fear and separation, division, disconnection can feel dangerous to the body, to the nervous system. And yet, like we just are all discovering and have talked about, the only way is through. And it's counterintuitive in the moment if you are giving your mind to your heart and all of a sudden in consciousness is nothing but, say, fury. It can be a counterintuitive to think the only way is through. Okay. It's like, I'm pretty sure the only way is somewhere besides through, around, over, back. I get it. And although it may feel counterintuitive and sometimes dangerous depending on the way you're wired, and if you step into fight or flight, the more present, sincere, open, compassionate, available we are in that moment, the faster it, because there's something deeper, there's wisdom beyond our thinking mind and our fight or flight reaction and our conditioning. And that wisdom, that radiant essence, is the great redeemer, the dissolver, the releaser. It's a learned way that we have. And if you don't have it, great, fabulous. But it's a learned way to, feel something like that starting to come into consciousness and bubble up, and to put a lid on it somehow. And then it's almost like we need to learn to walk toward, to open even more. Sharon, and I love this when she says it, you just instantly feel better, always says, come here, sweetheart, come here. To whatever. And I don't know, something about it when she says it is so, it's a beautiful pointer. It has a lot of transmission. These pieces of that feel fractured and separate and disconnected and divided are moving into consciousness to be loved, seen, and I just keep using the word redeemed, but it means restored to originality, restored. And if they are coming into our consciousness, you can't deny that they are ours. If they're here they are. I get the feeling of frustration and fear, sometimes even, you know, I think most of you know, but in this case, there was a spontaneous, a lot of the awakened consciousness was spontaneous. And one of the spontaneous happenings was Kundalini, spontaneous. Going down the street thinking I'm Jennifer Tyler, being Jennifer Tyler, and bam. And I personally felt terrorized and in a lot of danger. And that's when I met Sharon. And I remember my first private meeting with her was at a 10-day silent retreat at the Nada Center. And, you know, she was asking me about the journey, and those were my first words to her. I'm in terror. And I'm not saying this has to be your journey or that you are or anything else. There's a lot of it out there, and there can be a lot of it in the journey of self-discovery. And I feel like it's kind of rarely talked about. I'm not trying to push out an experience that one has to have. No one has to have any kind of experience. Everyone's experience is unique and beautiful. But I felt like bringing it forward tonight because of some of the emails I'm getting. Some people that are talking with me. Because there's our own personal, unique expression as Jen, as Jan, as Diana, Barb, Jim. And there is the collective, vast terrain of the psyche. And every awakened being that I've spoken with has encountered that at some point. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the gentle, compassionate, understanding just really has to be part of the practice. We're human beingness. And while the flame of the eternal heart is never, never diminished, the personal heart and the identified heart, the heart still believing in separation, is a tender beast, a tender and vulnerable area to mine into. And reality is serving that up. The heart of being. We're starting to hear it. So I think it's useful to, I'm the kind of person, I don't know if it will be for you, I'm very visionary and sort of forward thinking, but when times get tougher, like you might say, more uncertain, going back to basics, I feel, is a really useful skill and tool. Steadfastness. I was looking for a better word than discipline. Steadfastness. Questioning, questioning the beliefs, the ideas about reality. As we all know, they can never touch reality. True nature, it's eternal, infinite, always present. This is being realized. And as that process of deconstructing the me, deconstructing the separate sense of self is happening, we go on faith and devotion. I keep wanting to say commitment to looking within, discovering what's within, always. Never distant, never far, never separate. What accompanies us in all moments of apparent duality. It accompanies us. It's never not. And the discovery, contrary to some teaching that's out there, is not like it doesn't deaden the human experience. It sobers it up. So we go within in a gentle with a gentle intention to discover what is always accompanying us and everything else, all phenomena, all existence. Because the wisdom in that unfolding is beyond, it's beyond. It's beyond what we can imagine, what we can intellectualize. There's wisdom in the unfolding wisdom for the body as well, I will say. It can look dramatically different than what the mind thinks you should do. I mean, like y'all know, I'm not saying you have to do any of this. This is just an example of how outside the intellect it might be. There were spontaneous movements here and wild looking sort of dancing sometimes, or shaking, or verbalizing, toning, breathing patterns that wanted to come in and assist and help with the rewiring of the nervous system. I was working as a healer, and I had definite ideas around how to help the body along through the changes that come from awakened consciousness. I mean, we're experiencing that on a collective level right now. The body of existence is going through dramatic shifts as a reflection of the awakened consciousness that's coming online. There can be great wisdom. There is great wisdom. If you run into these tumultuous, more challenging to identify and more challenging to let go, I found, than ideas. Areas of identity in the heart and the emotional body. Real holdings. Conditionings. Mantras. I used a mantra from a counselor that I worked with a long time ago before any notion of spiritual awakening, but it sure worked with and I think it's something they do in, not Zen, but, no, I can't. It's one of the Buddhist traditions, but where you name. So you just say fear, no danger. Fear, no danger. Tapping the thymus. I mean, I could go on and on. Get a hold of me if you want some more of these. I'm not going to waste all of our time, but the wisdom inside of you is custom, tailor-made, and perfect. But may look wacky to the mind or to other people. got to give it up. So I just wanted to bring a little bit of that forward. I understand. It's coming on strong. And it is collective. And I know that a lot of us are empathic and or just at various stages of awakened consciousness, which, as Adya always says, it enlarges your circle of regard. Awakened consciousness, your circle of regard when you're a me, a tightly consolidated me, is pretty small. And I know you all can feel the real richness to all of this as well, and our good fortune. So before we take a break, I just wanted to read this. This is from a website called The Garden of the Beloved. It's an anonymous writer, anonymous, awakened, very Sufi-like being. I don't know who it is, and I don't know how I stumbled across it. But the writing on that website is just fantastic. So resonant for me. However saddened I may become at the suffering inherent in this life, the joy inherent is there as well. For both exist at once in this madness known to those who love. And something else is there as well, whether we sob, collapsed in sorrow, or laugh, dancing in the arms of joy, something that is back, behind, before, the dualities of joy and sorrow. Something untouched and unmoved by the ever vacillating experience of polarities and all that lies between. Something that does not end them, but strangely accompanies them. It is an ecstasy, if I must use a word, but an ecstasy without opposite, a joy without cause, that shines at the heart of being. Even as within the peripheral sky, opposites come, go, ebb, flow. What is this rapturous radiance? Is it the soul, as some would assert, or the presence of God within us, or any number of things declared by the many faiths as truth? I write of she, or the beautiful one, but know that those are only the words of a foolish old man struggling to say what the Sufi sage said much better long ago. I am in love, but with whom I do not know. Let's take a 10-minute break. See y'all when we get back.